Hello everyone, Greg Diamond here, editor of 10 Stock Trader. A lot to cover this week, and what I want to focus on today is momentum within the stock market. Okay, I'm just going to jump right into this. This is the iShares USA Momentum Factor Fund, another way of tracking high momentum stocks. Okay, now let me start here. This is back in 2021 where we had this top. Now you can see here we had this big drop down. Okay. And then we kind of had this grinding 5-wave move higher. And then you know what happened after. We had the 2022 bear market. Okay. Now let's fast forward to what's happening in 2024. Similar type price action. A big drop down and then what appears to be a 5-wave move. Okay. And we have divergence here. And this is a weekly chart. So the divergence tends to have more weight. So when you look at the divergence on the RSI, you can see it's diverging, okay, negative divergence. When you look at the composite index, that's diverging as well. Now, am I saying that we're going to get a 2022 like bear market? Probably not. But what I am saying is that we are looking at an inflection point to trade, okay? So the other thing, which I'll jump into in a minute, is if I saw this happening with semiconductors and some big tech stocks, which I'll get into in a second, and everything was rallying together, I would be wildly bullish, okay? But that is not happening. We are seeing an incredible amount of dislocation within the stock market. If you look underneath the hood, okay, the leaders of this bull market have been semiconductors. It is all underperforming. I'll show you that chart in a second. But that is something to keep in mind. Yes, it can last longer, it can drag out. When you're trading long options, it can be frustrating because you're dealing with time decay. But it is a matter of fact that when you don't see everything partaking in this type of rally, it's a warning sign. Okay, so here are some other dates that I want to focus on. All right, I covered for 10 Stock Trader subscribers a very important historical time factor that we are right in the middle of. Why is it historical? Well, the last few times that this has happened was the crash of 1987, the start of World War II, and the panic of 1857. Doesn't happen all that often, but when they do, it's very, very important. Now, the peak of that is the last week in December, first week in January. So when I see this type of divergence happening and I see this rare historical time factor pop up, yeah, I'm concerned about the complacency and frothiness of this market. Some of the things I see on Twitter or X rather, wildly bullish. It's incredible to me how history repeats. Especially at tops. Again, I'm not saying that we are going to crash, but this is definitely an inflection point that I'm concerned about in terms of getting wildly bullish at this environment. All right. So what could we look for in terms of? And I outlined this to subscribers last week. Or at least I mentioned it, but now let me go into more detail. Okay, so there's really two scenarios in which I see this whole market taking place. Okay, maybe this drags a little bit higher, okay, into the end of this year, and then the first week of next year, and then we are looking at a massive correction. Okay, and this could last into, as you can see down on this chart, this could last into April of next year. That is a multi-month correction. Again, just a correction, but you're talking anywhere from 10 to 20% on the downside. Some of the high-flying tech stocks, semiconductor stocks, you could be looking at 20 to 30%. All right, that's if we have a little bit more rally into this end of the year, the Christmas Santa Claus rally, whatever you want to call it, that's fine. Okay, now let's look at the even more bearish scenario. Okay, where last week or early this week marks a top. We have inflation numbers coming out, but we saw interest rates somewhat bottom last week, so keep an eye on that. Here's the other scenario, okay? We get a big drop down into, let's say, right before Christmas, okay? And then a little bounce that doesn't make a higher high, and then we get the big correction, okay? And I'm not worried about this correction in terms of, I have this red line, it could be choppy, it could be whatever, but the point is that I'm not looking at this from a perspective of, we're just going to have this continued smooth grind higher in place. And a lot of people like to talk to the election of Donald Trump being elected and how, it's a repeat of 2016. There are so many differences between what happened in 2016 and what's happening now that needs to be addressed. Number one, 2016 was off of a low in the stock market, okay? If you remember late, 2015, And then in 2016, you know, there was a China meltdown, there was Brexit, there was a lot of fear going into the 2016 election. We were already at a low. And then everything rallied after that. I mean, international stocks, semiconductors, industrials, the NASDAQ, everything rallied. This is different because what we've already rallied from 2022 into 2024. And again, as I mentioned, I'm not seeing what's happening back then in terms of the semiconductor stocks are not rallying. Let me just go ahead and show you that right now. Okay, here's the semiconductor fund SMH, and what we have here, you can see I have, you know, some Elliott wave counts on here. But look, okay, this topped back in July, and it can't rally even above the post-election rally. And so, you know, to me, you know, if you go back to what I just outlined with momentum, you know, you can see here I have this wave 4 down here. This tells me that we are looking at this correction into the start of early next year. Now, in the short term, whether or not that, you know, transcends into a short-term rally into the end of the month, beginning of next year, or we get this sharp move down with a lower high into the last week of 2024, early 2025, it doesn't really matter to me. To me, that's going to be, again, based on the historical time factor and this divergence that we're looking at, a volatile, very volatile inflection point. Okay, so let me also show you. Let me jump down to the daily level here. And so you can see here, semiconductors starting to drop here on Monday morning. Now let me just show you Google, okay? Pop it up here. All right, so Google hasn't made a new high. You know, it saw the post-election bump. You know, it's trying to rally here. Maybe we get a jump into the end of the year. That's fine, but it still hasn't made a new high above this July high. But the NASDAQ has, the S&P has. So again, we're seeing this huge divergence take shape, okay? Let's look at Microsoft, same type. Again, these are big tech stocks. They should be leading the market along with semiconductors, but they're not, all right? So Microsoft is trying to break out of this wedge. You know, again, does it trade up into the end of December, you know, and then we get this, if it can't break above this July high, similar to Google and stuff, then, you know, this is probably a setup where, again, we had this huge correction in April. So I wanted to show you, you know, how the momentum factor fund is setting up similar to 2021, and then also show you the divergence that I'm seeing, you know, within quote unquote leadership within this market. And, you know, this dislocation divergence based on history, based on my own experience, and then when I factor in this, you know, historical time factor heading into the end of the month and then the beginning of 2025, tells me to be very cautious about being, you know, overly bullish here. Thank you very much. And a couple other announcements. Number one, if you're a 10 Stock Trader subscriber, check out my latest weekly market outlook. At the bottom, you'll see that we are going to be transitioning to the Stansberry app. So you can have, so we're not, January 6th, we're not going to be using the 10 Stock Trader app anymore. It's going to be embedded within the Stansberry app. And a couple other things. Number one, we're going to be taking a little hiatus from the Diamond's Edge video. So this might be one of the last ones. It may pick up again in the start of next year. We're kind of working through maybe, you know, a multi video series with that. And I'm going to be converting the traditional weekly market outlook into the videos. But that's going to be solely for 10 Stock Trader subscribers and Alliance members. That will start next Monday. Thank you very much.